Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show. Want to say hello to all the Pewter people that are filing into the chat, as we have a great episode in store for you. Yesterday, we spoke to all of the defensive position coach, and there was so much information, so much content to get to that we actually split it up into 2 days. So yesterday, as we talked about the defensive line, outside linebackers, and inside linebackers, we knew that today we wanted to talk a lot about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. Obviously, some big moves at safety, what's going on with the nickel position, and obviously a new starting corner, even though he started a lot last year with Zion McCollum. So a lot of fun stuff to get into and a great guest as well. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joining with me today, he's been on the show before, so you guys should be familiar with him. A great Bucs writer over at A to Z Sports, where he's also the managing editor of the website. Welcome back to the show, Evan Winter. Evan, thanks so much for joining me. How you doing this afternoon?
The pleasure's all mine, Matt. I'm doing great, man. It's always an honor to be on. What should I say?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to have you on. You know you're good when we bring you back on shows because we've had guests before, and I've always enjoyed talking to you, even going back to training camp, like early in the Vita Vea days. I remember like we first met and kind of connected watching film on Vita Vea. You were like, hey, like come take a look at this. And we've kind of just clicked ever since then. Before we get into all this Bucs information, content stuff, why don't you just tell everybody what's going on over at A to Z? Anything you're excited about or what's rocking and rolling over there?
Yeah, so obviously we just wrapped up with the draft. It was really, really successful. We set a new site record, wrote 798 articles. And for those unfamiliar with, for those unfamiliar with A to Z Sports, we cover all 32 teams. So we're not, directly one.
Right.
That would be insane. But yeah, set a whole new site record with 800 posts throughout the week, and that was of course distributed against all 32 teams, as well as we do some Vols coverage, Tennessee Volunteers coverage as well. But yeah, actually gearing up for another season, our second season with all 32 under our belt. But this year, we're actually expanding into the college markets. We're going to start off with about, top 12, top 14 teams / markets. So, your Alabamas, your Georgias, playing the chalk at the end of the day. But we're branching out into that. We're currently building all that out right now. So it's definitely an exciting time. But yeah, things couldn't be better.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Obviously, Alabama and Georgia specifically, Bucs fans will like hearing that because they drafted some SEC guys from those schools in this year's draft that took place last weekend. Evan, let's just get your initial thoughts on how you believe that the Bucs did. Obviously, Graham Barton first round and a lot of picks where it feels like there are some guys that can contribute right away, or at least played into filling out some depth of this team that I think was kind of needed.
100%. And I mean, I gave the Bucs an A grade at the end of the day. A lot of it was centered. I mean, I thought the draft from top to bottom was really good, but A+ grade. And this is the first time I've ever given out an A+ grade in terms of grading throughout my entire career when it comes to a draft pick, and that's for any team at all. The Graham Barton pick was just absolutely right on the point, hit the head, and honestly, I didn't think he was going to be there at 26. There's some coworkers of mine that could really quickly pull up some Slack messages with me saying, oh, yeah, he's gone by 20 or, at 20. He's not getting past 20, so on and so forth, with the Steelers, especially picking at number 20. So my whole impression was he wasn't going to be there, but if he was there, home run pick, absolutely fits the system, fits what the Bucs are looking for. And as Jason Light said it during the press conference right after the pick is, they nailed another one. And if he turns out to be what they think he should be, which I don't see why he wouldn't, this offensive line, I tweeted about it last week. I've grown up my entire life. I'm 35 years old, just to go ahead and throw that out there. I've been a Bucs fan since like 96, right? So been invested for a long time. And I know every Bucs fan would agree with me on this. The offensive line has never been a strong point. It hasn't even been an okay point for the most part. There's been a few seasons here and there where it was a respectable unit. And just to see what this unit has become from 2020 till now, outside of 2022, obviously, But to see just what this unit has become over the last few years, and now with the addition of Barton, obviously they're going to lock up Tristan Wirfs. You've got Gadecki and Malk on the right side for a few years under their rookie deals. I mean, this offensive line could be top 5, top 3 year in, year out if Barton turns into what they think he's going to be. And it's going to be so much fun to watch, and just how it will affect the offense in a positive way. You know, from the offensive line to the quarterback to the receivers, just as a whole. Man, it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Barton's already getting comparisons to Ali Marpet, which is being held in very high regard. But even Barton was the first to admit, he's like, I haven't done anything in the NFL yet, so let's pump the brakes a little bit. But I think one of the most exciting things about this offensive line is really just the youth of it. Like, even Tristan Wirfs is kind of like the veteran of the group outside of however it shakes out at left guard. But like, Wirfs is still a young player who's about to obviously get paid, deservingly so, with a big contract. Luke Gedecke's only going into year 3. Cody Malk, if he can take steps forward, such as Luke Gedecke did last season, and I know Gedecke was moving from guard to his natural position at tackle, but if Malk can kind of take a step forward, if Barton is who we believe that he can be, whether he's at center, I know they said initially he's going to be at center, but with the draft pick of Elijah Klein, we'll see how it plays out. There's a long way to go with training camp. And if Klein works out too, that is, again, just a huge amount of youth. And I think Jason Licht deserves a lot of credit because he got ridiculed for the offensive line being poor over the last couple of seasons. And that obviously played a factor into the Bucs running game being dead last in the league over the last 2 years. But I think people kind of forget that the plan was in place for Ryan Jensen to be the starter still to this day. And it wasn't even that they didn't know Jensen was going to be starting. Last year was a little bit different. He got hurt in training camp. You can't account for that. Like, on the first day of practice, there's no one available in free agency at that point that's going to come in and save your team. And, oh, by the way, Ali Marpet retired out of the blue. So again, he had to kind of make moves on the fly, traded for Shaq Mason a couple of seasons ago, and then obviously did everything last year with Stinney starting and Matt Filer before that, and then going to Stinney. So Jason is always going to replenish that offensive line room. I wouldn't be surprised if he drafts another offensive lineman a year from now in the 2025 NFL draft. But I think this group really has a lot of potential, Evan.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Are the injuries and the retirement or the injury to Jensen and the retirement, Marpet retirement, and everybody seems to forget that for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you look at Robert Hainsey, he had a pretty solid 2022 year, and then obviously he just wasn't a fit for 2023. And nobody was expecting the offense to be the train wreck that it was, that led to Byron getting fired, and then a scheme change, so on and so forth. So there are just so many other factors that go into it. It's not directly on Jason Licht. And if you just look at the dude's track record as a whole, the guy knows how to draft offensive linemen. Like, my whole thing with, like, when I was writing out the draft grades post and the draft class post, for the website after it was done, I was trying to find a picture of Elijah Hicks on Imagine, the USA Today site, however you pronounce it. I couldn't find anything. I literally had to go to his school website and pull it. And I was like, I wrote in my grades, I was like, look, that's how unknown this guy is I had to go to his site. I was like, but Jason Licht is drafting him. He's a small school guy. I faith all the way. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. There are always, and that's also, the offensive line took a step back after all that for sure. And that's expected, but there were still serviceable moments. There were times where, you could see flashes and stuff like that. Either way, just to navigate it the way he did, yes, the results weren't optimal, but they weren't disastrous at the end of the day, So he did what he could to keep his head above water.
I really liked what John Spytek, the Bucs assistant general manager, said when he spoke to the media, I believe on Saturday after the draft was done. Obviously, he was asked about Elijah Klein, and he said, UTEP's a smaller school in Division I. He's like, when you think UTEP, like, they're the coal miners. Like, what position do you think that we draft from there? Offensive line, gritty player, physical, in your face. It totally makes 100% sense. We got a super chat from Revfish. Thank you so much, Mark Fisher, for the $4.99 super chat. And if you super chat us, you get to cut the line because we got a lot of comments. Can't get to everybody, but if you super chat us, we make sure we get to it. And really doesn't matter what the topic that we're talking about. If you super chat us, we'll get to whatever you want to discuss. So Revfish says, schedules come soon. How are preseason schedules done by the NFL, or do teams do them individually? and last two each week are stuck with each other. It's a little bit of a collaboration. I mean, teams try to work hand in hand, and obviously with the preseason, you don't want to travel like a crazy amount. So you're not going to see the Bucs go to the West Coast for a preseason game. Every year they end up playing the Miami Dolphins because you want to keep it, again, the travel pretty close. That's why the Jets and the Giants play against each other every single year. And then once those preseason schedules are made, that's where you see teams talking to other teams about the joint training camp practice. For example, the Jets and the Bucs last season doing it in Florham Park, New Jersey. They've done it with the Titans a couple of times as well because the travel isn't crazy far compared to around the rest of the league. And Evan, I'm sure you're hoping that the Bucs end up having another joint training camp practice against the Titans this year.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually funny you bring that up. Just a quick behind the scenes thing. We were actually I was talking about with my bosses today about my travel plans for training camp potentially. And we're actually eyeing potentially the 49ers or the Ravens joint practices for sure. So that way I can kind of branch out to our other markets as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, Titans or Ravens or 49ers. Let's do it. Let's go.
Thing about the NFL draft, any other picks outside of Graham Barton in the first round, either a pick you like the most or a pick that made you go, not exactly sure about that when it comes to the Bucs.
Yeah, outside of Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was the talk of, obviously it was in our faces the first day. Everyone was shocked. But even on day 3, we're like, I still can't believe that they drafted Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall.
Yeah, usually, you sleep on it a couple of days later. You're like, okay, I can kind of see what's going on. But yeah, that's just one that, and the worst, real quick, and this is a great thing as, being on the side of the Bucs is they've got to deal with this for 2 years. Like, it's not going to go away for at least 2 years. So yeah, have fun with that. But anyways, going back to the moves, I mean, I liked a lot. I really like Adunze to Chicago. I really, really like the Pearsall selection for the 49ers, even though, some might have deemed that a little early, but his route running in that offense, oh my God, the dude's going to be open all kinds of time. But I really like the Dallas Turner trade up from the Vikings. I was really high on Turner going into the draft. And, in terms of, what the Vikings paid for, I think it was a 5th round pick this year and then a 3rd and 4th next year.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to get a 3rd round compensatory for Kirk Cousins, or at least they're projected to. So really they're paying a 4th and a 5th to move up 6 spots and get what I thought was the best defensive talent in the draft. So I really like that move at the end of the day.
How about the Bucs? Was there anything else that really stood out to you?
Oh, throughout the draft. Sorry, I thought you meant round 1. Yeah.
No, it's good. You can go any direction you want. That's the beauty of the show.
Yeah, I absolutely love the McMillan pick, man. Just what he can do out of the slot, and that allows Chris Godwin to play outside more. Obviously, Godwin was great in the slot, but it was really rough on him. Tore his ACL out of the position. Just a really physical position in the Bruce Arians offense, really worn on him. But man, just imagining either whether there's a 3-by-1 or a 2-by-2, obviously 4 wide receivers on the field, whatever the formation is for the receivers, having Godwin and Jalen on the inside, and then Mike Evans and Trey Palmer on the outside. Whoo, man! And then if they can get Culp going at all this year, I expect him to be more of a next year thing. But if they can get him on the field at all, like I think it was Spytek that said, once you get the ball in his hands, you're not catching him. I mean, dude, him in this offense, like, I'm really excited for. And at pick 246, that kind of low risk, high reward.
Exactly.
I mean, you gotta love it. You gotta love it all day. And then even just real quick, the Bucky Irving pick, I liked it overall. Not too impressed with his. I like his shiftiness. I like his vision. Obviously not the great of an athlete, but if things are going right around him, which they should be for the most part, he's going to be a pretty effective player too.
I like that Trevor Sikkema is a big fan of him, and I trust Trevor Sikkema is pretty much his word is gospel when it comes to the draft. Yeah, the Culp thing was very interesting, and John Spytek gave us a lot of gold with his press conference, and he already said he's going to be the fastest tight end in the tight end room for the Buccaneers. And one of the things that Culp excels in is that he can kind of make some tough catches, strong hands, and can make the catch in traffic, which I think was kind of an issue for Cade Otton last season. Don't get me wrong. When Otton is down the field and he's open, he'll make the play and keep it moving. But there was a lot of times if a backer or a defensive back was on him, he didn't really make the difficult catches, which, whatever. He's the fourth option on offense for the Buccaneers. But if they can kind of tap into something a little bit different there with Culp, I think that'll be interesting. And McMillan, I think I'm most intrigued. Taulia Smith overall is my favorite pick by the Bucs. But good. McMillan, I think, is the most intriguing because he has the potential to flip this draft for the Bucs in terms of going from good to great or good to average, okay, or kind of staying at that level based on what Liam Cohen, the Bucs offensive coordinator, can do, using him, I think, in many different ways. And he played almost primarily in the slot at Washington. So it'll be interesting to see how they use Godwin as well, because initially there were some thoughts that they would put Godwin back in the slot. But to your point, Evan, he did get beat up a lot over there, went to the outside last season and was fine, but again, wasn't the Chris Godwin that I think people expect from what he was in 2019 and 2020. And maybe that just comes from he's a little bit older and he's coming back from that knee injury. But there's no doubt there's tons of excitement when it comes to this year's draft question. There's no question about it. One player that was drafted by the Bucs in the first round a couple of seasons ago was Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. The Bucs, it was reported, are not going to pick up his fifth-year option. Doesn't necessarily come as a surprise. It would have cost the Bucs a fair amount of money for a guy that might not even be starting this season. So just give me your thoughts on JTS heading into this year. There's some talks about him being a chess piece and kind of moving him around. But what are your thoughts about JTS, his overall tenure with the Bucs and heading into this season?
Yeah, I mean, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, but, not picking up the fifth-year option just kind of reminds me of his career overall, and it's just not finished, I mean, he just can't get to that next point to where he's always there to make the play, but 7 out of 10 times he's not going to finish the play. And he's been solid. He's been a good locker room guy, obviously good character guy. He's never caused any problems and things like that.
Right.
So, he's got my respect at the end of the day and everything like that. And, if I was any team, I would want him on the team, in terms of just a player and somebody, but he's just not going to be that guy at the end of the day, right? He's not going to be that number one option, which, oh my God, he looked like that guy during his first preseason, during his rookie year. I mean, man, he looked like the next coming of, just whomever you want to plug in right there, especially against the Texans in that preseason matchup. But regardless, overall, number 32 overall pick, he was raw coming in. He missed the COVID year, or
he did
missed a chunk of the COVID. Yeah, okay, I couldn't remember if it's a chunk or the whole COVID year. So he was always going to kind of be, a long-term project. It just unfortunately just didn't turn out the way that we had hoped, betting on his athlete, or the Bucs had hoped, betting on his athleticism and upside. But, pulling for the guy, hoping he does well this year. Hopefully he can get, 7, 8, 9 sacks maybe in this rotation and land himself a nice deal somewhere next year, possibly maybe even back in Tampa. But I give his overall career here about a C. C's get degrees at the end of the day. But unfortunately, just didn't make the dean's list or didn't get on honor roll any very much.
Yeah, I think what hurts JTS the most, and he's a good guy. I enjoy talking to him in the locker room, but we got to separate the person from the player and the on-field production. I think what hurts him the most is because he was a first-round pick. Like, I don't think he's a bad player by any means. The biggest knock on him is that he's not able to finish. And when you're an edge rusher and you're going after the quarterback, that's the most important part of the job. So I've kind of said before, and I do believe this, like if Yaya Diaby was taken in the first round and we viewed JTS, if JTS was a third-round pick, you'd be like, all right, JTS, good value for what you got in the third round. Like, he's a solid backup player. If he has to be a spot starter for a couple of times because injuries happen all throughout the year and every single season in football, I'd be okay with it. I'd be fine with it. He already has a great amount of experience, but is when you attach the, oh, he's a first-round pick, you automatically think like, oh, he's already has to meet this level of expectations. The bar is already somewhat high because of where you are drafted, where Yaya Diaby, on the other hand, kind of exceeded expectations because he was a third-round pick. He didn't start, and then he came in and got 7.5 sacks. So I'm curious if the Bucs, again, with the chess piece, if they'll move him around. We know that Todd Bowles loves to bring so many different kinds of looks. Like, will JTS kind of be roaming around a little bit because he is a very athletic player? And another thing JTS does have going for him is after he was I'll say bench, like he still played, but didn't get as many snaps. He kind of turned it on at the end of the year. And I don't know if that was because it lit a fire under him, but he made the big play against Carolina. So, maybe that's the motivation that he needs going into this year, because it's kind of a make or break for him. Anthony Nelson is on a 1-year deal as well. And with the Bucs, and Randy Gregory obviously was brought in this offseason. He's on a 1-year deal. The Bucs outside linebacker room next season could look way different, because you got some young guys with Diaby and Braswell. And let's not forget about Marquise Watts, who made a splash last year. And Jose Ramirez, the team's still very high on.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, especially in terms of the draft pick. It's kind of like, here going back this past week at the draft, like I said, we wrote 800 posts, right? That's a team of about 30 writers. Some of our writers write a certain amount down here per week. Some write a certain amount up here per week. It looks a lot better for the writers down here when they write, twice, 3 times as much. And the writers up here are doing their job, but they're already writing 4 times what that writer was, but they're not going over what, their floor is or whatever. Mm-hmm. So while they're doing more work, it just doesn't look the same because of the expectation. Exactly what you're saying. So I'm right there with you on board 100%. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they use him. One thing in JTS's favor, or his defense for sure, hopefully to help get him, some nice numbers this year to either get a new contract in Tampa next year or, elsewhere. Hopefully they're not dropping him back in coverage as much. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against him. That's just, obviously you don't want to see, your first, second, third round, most defensive ends, unless Fred Warner's playing edge, whatever.
Right.
You don't want to see them dropping back in coverage a lot. So yeah, let's just hope they don't make him do that too much.
Hopefully Todd Bowles doesn't do that. He does, he does tend to drop back the outside linebackers a little bit too much for my liking. And I get it's supposed to be the element of surprise, but if you do it too much, It's not surprising to the opponent anymore. And obviously they'll have it on tape. All right, let's pivot now to the secondary, the topic of today's show. Like we mentioned at the beginning, we spoke with all the Bucs defensive coaches on Tuesday, and we'll talk about the secondary today. Obviously heard from safeties coach Nick Rapone, who is an absolute gem, getting to talk to him. Kevin Ross as well, the cornerbacks coach. We got a little bit from Larry Foote as well. I do want to start with the safeties and their newest player, but also a returning player, of course, that is Jordan Whitehead re-signing, or I shouldn't say re-signing, but signing back to the Buccaneers after 2 seasons with the Jets. I think immediately brings back a physicality that the Bucs were kind of missing in the absence of Jordan Whitehead. They tried it with Logan Ryan, and I thought he wasn't bad, but he obviously got hurt and missed a lot of time. And then the experiment with Ryan Neal just did not work out last season. Another guy, good guy, but just bad production on the field. So, Evan, your initial thoughts about Jordan Whitehead returning to Tampa Bay, his fit back in this defense, and whether you like or don't like it?
Absolutely love it. I mean, it's almost impossible to come away from this unless you just weren't a fan of, how he would do his Twitter timeline from time to time. Even then it was mostly innocuous, but still, there's no way to not like this move. And it doesn't stem. Sorry, my cat is trying to make a guest appearance on the show.
You're good.
Trying to beg. So if my computer's shaking,
animals are welcome.
I'm trying to hold them off. Yeah, there's nothing to not to like. He's the perfect complement for Antoine, and like they mentioned in the press conferences yesterday, these two guys get along. They know each other well. I mean, obviously, they were chatting back and forth before the deal became official on Twitter, a couple months ago. And yeah, I mean, you look at running backs, you look at Lindell White and Chris Johnson, smash and dash back in the day. There was thunder and lightning at one point. I can't remember that exact combo. Well, you can create up some kind of nickname for these two because Antoine's that all-around do-it guy, fills out the stat sheet like he just did in a remarkable fashion last year. And then Jordan, yes, like Nick talked about, Coach Nick Rapone, like he talked about yesterday, really did improve his range last year. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, the 3 of the 4 interceptions came in the opener against the Bills. Well, guess what? You got to have good range just to do that in the first place. You got to know what you're doing to be there in the first place. So anyways, but yeah, he improved his coverage skills last year. He's still that physical box guy, though. At the end of the day, that's going to be his strength. but these two complement each other perfectly. Knows the defense. I mean, it should just be like riding a bike again with Jordan Whitehead back there, and that's especially. And again, here's something else that's important to consider. It's a big move, not solely because of the low bar that was set by, unfortunately, Ryan Neal and others last year. It is its own bar. It crosses its own threshold in the fact that it's just a good move, and it's something that's sensible. It was cost efficient, and it should work ultimately at the end of the day.
And I think the way that Todd Bowles deploys his safeties, it almost makes it a little bit more important, in my opinion, that they have the safety room down packed and they'll obviously figure everything else out at corner. And to your point, I think the range of Jordan Whitehead, he wasn't asked to like drop back and cover all the time in this Buccaneers defense. So it's not like that he couldn't do it. He just wasn't asked to. And then he goes to the Jets. He had 6 interceptions in his 2 years with the Jets. He had 5 with the Buccaneers in 4 seasons. The Josh Allen 3 interceptions. Let's remember, that was the first game of the season, and it was on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, everyone remembers it because Rodgers got injured. But the whole world was watching that. And I still remember, I don't remember who asked the question, but Todd Bowles was asked like that following week, hey, primetime game, how cool was it to see a former player of yours? And Todd Bowles was like super ecstatic about it, which showed to see how much he truly cares about his former players and particularly Jordan Whitehead in this situation. And I know a lot of Bucs fans saw the video of Nick Rapone finding out from John Spytek and Todd Bowles when they re-signed Jordan Whitehead. I know Bucs fans are happy that Whitehead is back. Nobody was happier than Nick Rapone when he got the news that Jordan Whitehead is back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's get to 2 videos real quick that we'll play them back to back of Rapone, his thoughts about Jordan Whitehead being back and how he improved as a player.
First of all, that should be confidential. Coach Bowles got me on that. Well, I mean, you saw it on the video. He's a good football player. He was good when he was here. He was good up in New York. And I would think he'd be a good football player down here. And he's everything that you want in a football player. He loves football. He loves contact. He enjoys practicing. So, my emotions got the best of me, but when you get somebody like that back in the fold, it's pretty nice. Where do I think he improved? I think he improved like all young guys do. He left here at 24, I believe, because he came out a year early. And all those guys are coming into their sweet spot. He's 25, going to be 26. Winfield's in the same picture. And where they improve is they improve mentally. That's the biggest thing, because everything slows down for them. And, that's about as honest as answer I can give. He's going to give you everything he has. Every player's a certain type of player. Jordan loves contact. He actually increased his range. We didn't play him deep. And the Jets played him deep. And you can see the twitch that he has. So probably the biggest thing was he increased his range, but it's just a maturity. He has seen a lot, and he's confident in what he can do.
So he brings more range than his first time with the Buccaneers. And what hasn't left is his physical nature of play. I think many Bucs fans remember this one when he forced the fumble on Aaron Jones in the NFC Championship game. It was like the first drive of the second half. It was a 3rd down play. The Bucs scored on the next play to go up 28-10, and then they obviously held on and won 31-26. So that was a crucial moment in the game. We know Jordan Whitehead can be physical, as you alluded to on social media. I think his pinned tweet is still someone saying it was a legal hit, and he was like, nah, I just hit hard, which I absolutely loved. But do you think in today's NFL landscape, the physical nature can still have an impact on this game? Because every single season there's new rules, there's penalties that are called that favor the offense. It feels like Jordan Whitehead's a little bit of last of a dying breed with his physical nature.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, especially in the secondary. It's pretty much the only places you can get overly physical these days. And it depends on the context. It's more just matchup is in the trenches, and then once you break free as a defensive lineman, well, you got to you've got to make sure you're just a quantum physics major to figure out how you want to land right, before getting a penalty called because of however you fell on the quarterback. So, yeah, it's insanely hard to deliver those hits in the right way. I mean, you see the flack that Kirby Joseph has caught since he took out T.J. Hawkinson, and now, granted, that's a whole different kind of context, but it's still to the overall point. It's so hard to make that decision these days. Do you want to go high and risk the penalty that's probably going to get called, or do you risk going low and potentially taking out somebody's knee? But just that's part of the game. So I think ultimately, and I really liked what TJ Hawkinson actually said a few weeks ago. He had his press conference, during Vikings. It was on April 15th. So 2 weeks ago. Sorry, the draft just scrambles my time of sense.
I almost didn't know it was Wednesday when I was like, it's a Wednesday edition of the show. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it just pops in your head, right? So, but yeah, on the first day of Vikings the regular offseason program, he said, the NFL needs to figure this out. It's got to come up with something because it has literally put both offensive players and defensive players in a bad spot to where they just don't know what to do. So they're making split-second decisions and just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. And when it comes to this kind of game, how fast-paced it is, I mean, anybody who knows this game, even shred of knowledge about it, knows that the moment you slow down is the moment you get hurt.
Yes.
And it just snowballs from there. So, yeah, it's so hard to be physical in this day and age. At the same time, Jordan Whitehead doesn't care. So as long as I love it, I can't wait to see what he brings back to the defense. Just be smart about it at the end of the day. On a fourth and 11 with 15 seconds,
right,
up by 2, and the opponent's on your 30. Don't go head hunting and give them a first down that puts them in field goal range to win the game or something like that.
Yeah.
So just be smart about it, and we're good to go.
And remember, Jordan Whitehead was not on the field on that play. I know we talked a lot about Bucs' success, but the year after they won the Super Bowl when they lost to the Rams, obviously that big pass from Matt Stafford to Cooper Kupp that set up the game-winning field goal, Whitehead wasn't on the field on that play. So I'm sure this time around he's like, I better be on the field in those crucial moments. And I do worry with the league. Eventually they're going to put in a rule that says you can't go at the player's knees, and it's going to be like, all right, well, like, what do you want us to hit then? And Todd Bowles always preaches to his players, play fast, and if you make a mistake, don't make the same mistake twice. Well, it's tough to play fast if you have to, as you said, come up with a formulation for how to tackle the guy in the right way. But nonetheless, even though there's not too many of these players, Jordan Whitehead still brings a little bit of an attitude and for sure physicality. And Nick Rapone was saying that the Bucs missed it.
How much did you miss Jordan's physicality? What he brings, and you talked about it as ball skills guy.
I think the whole team missed Jordan's physicality. Yeah. I think the whole team did. I mean, it's just like a heavyweight boxer. If you have a puncher, he punches. Yeah. And the opponent knows that he's a puncher.
It's not easy to do in today's NFL.
You can't lose that type of physicality.
Right.
It's not easy to do in today's NFL with
no,
so much
isn't.
of the changing landscape of the rules, and it's a lot of folks have wondered, can you really invoke, I guess, that fear in the offense when you can't do some of the things you used to be able to do as a defense?
Well, you have to be smarter. But see, Jordan loves contact. A lot of guys like to make the tackle and get the guy down. He loves contact. And, just like when we played Green Bay, what he did, he's gonna bring it. And that does get contagious, but that's who he is. Yeah. That's who Jordan is.
Nick Rapone kept saying Jordan loves contact. He said it like 4 or 5 times, which I appreciate. I'm not knocking it by any means. Another thing that Nick Rapone loves is Antoine Winfield Jr., and understandably so. He is the reigning first-team All-Pro of the NFL. Somehow did not make the Pro Bowl, but that's a conversation for another day. Obviously, this secondary, the safety room, is going to be led by Antoine Winfield Jr. How does he get better? Like, I don't know what else what he can do to get better at this point, besides maybe get some more interceptions. But I mean, the sky's the limit, Evan, for Antoine going into this year.
It's absolutely incredible. I try not, it's so easy to get just over sensational about players and what they do and stuff like that. And for good reason. I mean, we're watching some of the best athletes in the world just do amazing things. So, sensation is kind of part of the game. My God, though, what he did last year, and it wasn't just stats. It was game-changing plays. The Bucs, you could argue they don't get in the playoffs without Antoine Winfield Jr.
I
stripping
agree.
DJ Chark at the right. I mean,
Wholeheartedly, I agree.
And the Atlanta game when he forced that, you can even go back to, I think it was 2020. I want to say it's either 2020 or 2021, where he makes the insane end zone breakup against Calvin Ridley in the back of the end zone that the Bucs were struggling in that game. Like, he cut, and then of course, obviously, there's the Jared Cook forced fumble against the Saints in the playoff run, the Super Bowl run. I mean, the dude just, and it's because he hustles. He does not stop playing. He's not the best athlete in the world, and he makes it up through instincts, intelligence, preparation, and hustle. And he's just the ultimate competitor. He's the ultimate guy you want on your team. And I hope his new contract just absolutely shatters the safety market. It's absolutely deserved. I had a tweet pinned for the majority to my profile on Twitter for the majority of the football season. It had like 10 likes, but it was simple. Any tweet talking about paying Antoine Winfield Jr. is an evergreen tweet. And I didn't care that it had no interaction because it was damn true. And I was going to
that's how you felt
through the entire season. And he was just, 6 forced fumbles, 12 pass deflections. Career highs all across the board. I think tackles for loss were the only things he didn't set a career high in. Just absolutely an incredible year. Incredible year.
He was second on the team in sacks, and it just shows like he does a little bit of everything. And it's so funny to think that the year before he was playing in the slot. So imagine if he was back at free safety 2 seasons ago. And I understand like why they want to go about it at the time, but he's just an incredible player. I think what makes a truly great defensive back is instincts and being able to anticipate it. And he has it in droves, and the coaches rant and rave nonstop about the plays that he made, like you mentioned with the strip sack of the quarterback in the Carolina game, or not sack, but in the end zone. In those plays, he makes that in practice too, because he plays exactly like how he practices. I think another good example was the road game last season against the Saints. He was the first one that stripped that ball right by the zone, and it immediately put the momentum back in the Bucs' favor and kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. So yeah, the sky's the limit for Antoine Winfield Jr. So how do you challenge him this year? This is what Nick Rapone had to say about an encore season for Antoine Winfield Jr. And we may have to break this down a little bit further.
Well, first of all, Mr. Winfield can probably keep making progress. I keep saying this every year, and he gets mad at me. But because he does everything you can possibly think of. And I said, we got to get to a point where we're getting 7-8 interceptions a game. Now, he gets 7-8 a game and he continues with everything else. Wow. Wow. But he's a complete player. Everybody knows that. And he's a better person than he is player. He's a true pro's pro. And he's working out. He'll come in here and he'll be ready to go. And, sometimes you pinch yourself when you coach guys like him.
What's his reaction when you tell him to get 7 or 8?
He smiles. He says, I'm trying. I said, just keep. He actually could have had 6. There were against the Colts. He had it, and it was pulled out. He had 1, and they called a penalty. He could have had 5 or 6 because, unfortunately, at the end of the day, everybody looks at a DB, and the first thing they look at is what? Interceptions. But his game is so complete. It's he's a good player, and what's really nice is he's just going to start to hit that sweet spot.
We're trying to break it down. You're like 6 or 7 interceptions a game. I'm not sure if he misspoke and he meant like in a season, because I believe the NFL record is 6 interceptions in a game by one individual. To do that per game would be like, you would have to immediately put him in the Hall of Fame. Like it's physically impossible. But I guess if and again, you're like really splitting hairs in the situation. But I guess if you wanted something more from Antoine Winfield Jr. this season, maybe it's the interceptions. But I think that's more of just like the whole Bucs secondary than just Antoine. But obviously, if he's the leader of your secondary, kind of starts with him. It's like the interceptions he didn't get, he was making up for it with just completely taking the ball away with forced fumbles throughout the year.
Yeah, and just naturally as a safety, and like Nick was alluding to, people look at interceptions whether you're a safety or a corner. Well, safety is not getting targeted as near as much as a corner. He, especially last year, he was playing center field a lot more, so he might be over here on the play or over on the left side of the field whenever the right side of the field's getting targeted. So naturally there's a lot less opportunities. And Jordan Whitehead should create more of those opportunities, frankly, this year for him. And yeah, I do wonder because Nick Rapone's like at that age where like he could make anything sound like a joke if he wanted to, and you've got to kind of think about it. And he's just got that wisdom to where he could like layer things where he might have meant 7-8 per game, and it does come off as a funny joke either way. I do think he meant 7-8 per year, but regardless, I think just based off his position in general, he's going to have a lot less opportunities. And when he does get those opportunities, obviously complete the play, which he does, but then he's going to have instances like the Colts game and I remember being like, like as it happened.
Right.
But overall, I think, it would be great to see him get those interceptions. At the same time, though, doing what he did, and you've really got to be watching the team, right, to fully understand the greatness of his season.
Exactly.
Because you look at that stat sheet. Honestly, in my opinion, the most important stat out of all those stats is the forced fumble against Carolina. But just your basic casual would not understand that, and that's fine because they're not watching the Bucs. But there's just a lot of nuance in those stats from last year, and ultimately, unfortunately, interceptions hold the most weight.
It's funny you mentioned that Indy game because I was thinking that's the same building where maybe he had his most infamous interception when he mossed Michael Pittman a couple of seasons ago, which was an unreal play. But I think we're all excited to see what he can do this season because he just seems to make highlight play after highlight play in a different area every single time. And, for the Bucs, you can never get enough interceptions, just like how you can never get enough of Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. We always keep the vibes high on this show, and they have a ton of great vibe flavors to go along with some of their originals, like the sparkling orange or the sparkling watermelon. You see on the screen there, Galaxy, Astro, and Cosmic Vibe. My personal favorite is the Arctic Vibe. Strawberry lemonade is fantastic as well. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, if you haven't had one before and want to try it out, or maybe you're on vacation in a different spot and you need to know where to get one, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest location where you could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a health and fitness store, or if you're lucky enough, it might just be your bodega. And once you keep going to your bodega, you love Celsius, but you want to buy it in bulk so you're not making 1,000 trips. You can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. I'd recommend getting that variety pack because variety is the spice of life, and there's so many awesome flavors of Celsius. Go to Amazon Prime, click on the subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. So you're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. Got another super chat to get to, and it perfectly transitions to another player we want to talk about as we talk about the safeties, but get into the corners as well. This guy may end up playing in the slot for the Bucs this year, depending on what Todd Bowles decides. But Taulia Smith, one of the third-round picks for the Bucs, thanks to Will Keith 16 for this $4.99 super chat, who says Taulia Smith is a Jordan Whitehead clone. I think he makes the biggest impact of any rookie this year. Great draft coverage this weekend, boys. Thank you very much, Will Keith, for the kind words. I think from a physicality standpoint, you can make a little bit of a comparison to Taulia Smith and Jordan Whitehead, but I kind of see Taulia Smith more as a Antoine Winfield Jr. type of player, just because he can do a little bit of everything with the physicality, tackling, taking the ball away, and also blitzing off the line of scrimmage. What do you think?
Yeah, and he's got the size that you want too, that comes with that kind of role. I think it's 6'2", 200 pounds, somewhere around in there. He's the dude. I mean, I was watching the draft broadcast. I can't remember if it was NFL Networks or ESPN's, but I think it was ESPN because it was Louis Riddick. Regardless, as soon as he was drafted, and I love it whenever the analysts covering it on TV, they have like that immediate like guttural reaction, whether it's positive or negative. They're like, oh yeah, but that's what they did. They're like, oh, like he's gonna be a day one guy. Get ready for Taulia Smith, Tampa Bay, all this other stuff. And yeah, you really got to like his game. And the most impressive part is he transferred from West Virginia last year.
Yes.
Georgia, that was his first year. And he immediately caught, Kirby Smith's attention to where Kirby made him the starting star. He made him the star of the defense. So that right there should really speak volumes in terms of just his ability and his production, what he meant for the defense, and B, his ability to absorb a complex defense that quickly. We all know how complex Todd Bowles' defense is, and they talked about it yesterday about how communication is so important back there on the back end. Obviously, we've seen since Todd Bowles have been here what happens when communication breakdowns happen in the back end. So he's going to be a really I can never say this word, cerebral player. There we go. He's going to be that on top of, just a physical presence. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm curious now if he plays the slot. That's one way to get him on the field with Winfield and Whitehead. But I'm curious if Todd will come up with some packages where you have all three safeties on the field at the same time, because Antoine can obviously cover. And I would say he probably, even though we complimented everything about Jordan Whitehead, how he's expanded in his coverage, I think Winfield's still the best cover safety on this team. And you could play Whitehead in the box, or you can keep him back and keep Taulia Smith in the box. Yes, he is a safety, but the versatility is exactly what Todd Bowles loves about really any defensive back. So that's why I said he's my favorite guy. I think you make a great point about just knowing how to play in different complex schemes going to Georgia last season. Obviously, Todd Bowles is going to be a little bit more familiar with him because his son Troy plays at the University of Georgia as well. So a lot of the coaches spoke about Taulia Smith. So did Kevin Ross, because he might be coaching him in the nickel. And Larry Foote spoke about him as well. Let me see if I could pull this video. Yeah, here's Rapone and Kevin Ross talking about Taulia Smith.
Smith is probably what, Coach Bowles always wants to get in a safety. And meaning, we'd like him taller if we can, but he's 4'6". And we cross-train so much because during the season, if somebody breaks a fingernail, so he will come in as a safety and a nickel. Almost, it could be nickel, safety, nickel. We'll see how the progress goes. But he gives you a 205-pound frame. He's productive. He's physical. He can run. He's used to winning. It's important.
I thought we did excellent in the draft. I thought the staff did a hell of a job doing the draft. Got what we needed. So we'll see what happens.
What do you like about Taulia?
Very physical. Winner. Come from a winning program. Expects to win. That's big. That's huge. Believe me. At this day and age, when you can't really hit in practice and things like that right there, he's got a solid background. He'll come in and compete for a starting job.
Come in competing for a starting job. I think that was the biggest thing. Let's get to Larry Foote real quick. It's a bit of a shorter video.
You at the nickel position that maybe you have lacked?
He's a little more, he can cover, probably more savvy, more cornerish. Even though now that position is turning, you got to be able to be a safety and nickel now because so much 11 personnel you got to be included in the run game. A lot of teams blitz their nickels as we do, so he got to be able to cover and make tackles in the box. But he's a physical guy. Just watch the tape. We're gonna be well pleased with him. He's gonna come in here. He's gonna be a pro. Just going to Georgia, transferring from West Virginia, you got to earn it. And as long as he keep that same mentality, he'll be just fine.
Evan, I think the competition at nickel is going to be one of the most fun competitions for the Bucs at training camp, because Christian Izien obviously played there last season, went out with a good start with interceptions early on in that season, and is a great hustle player. They obviously signed Tavier Thomas from the Texans, who has experience in the slot. And then, of course, Taulia Smith. How do you kind of see that playing out at all, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and I'll be straight up honest. I've been wondering about Izzy all offseason.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
been that's been one of the guys like at the top of my mind. Funny how this job, right? It's like, the one person I've been thinking of all offseason, Christian Izzy. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's covering football for you. But anyways, yeah, I've been thinking about him all offseason though, really, and just like what he did this year. What it means for this year, what all the moves mean. And after listening to the coaches yesterday, man, it's going to be really interesting. Rapone was talking about how Tyke is going to be strong safety nickel, Izzy. And just a real quick aside, as soon as I heard thinking about Izzy all offseason, and as soon as I heard Larry say yesterday that Tyke was a little bit more cornerish at the nickel spot,
Yeah.
I was like, Izzy's moving to safety in some capacity. And then sure enough, later on, Rapone says that he's going to be free safety / nickel. So they're going to be mixing obviously Antoine can play nickel. You can throw Jordan in there on occasion. It sounds like it's going to be a mix of guys, honestly. It sounds like they're going to be very versatile. Sounds like they're going to be throwing a lot at offenses, and it sounds great. The only thing, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'm not trying to get too far ahead of my skis. It's just basic. That's the one great thing about Bowles being here since 2019. There's history to go off of, right? There's trends. There's all this other stuff. This is not just like this is a brand new coaching staff and we're just throwing this at the wall. Communication has been an issue, pretty much almost every single year. Yeah, and so maybe this is why and it's like, it reminds me of the Packers, how they cross-train all their offensive linemen, and how last year it really led to some bumps early on. Things smoothed out as the season went on, but it's kind of like what the Packers do with their offensive linemen. Maybe cross-training all these guys at these two different spots, maybe that's kind of adding to things. And if you're doing that on top of with a rookie, I mean, obviously with UDFA and Izzy last year, then they said they're cross-training Kayvon as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see how all that plays out in the long run. But in the short run, in terms of talking about the nickel battle position, yeah, it's going to be super fun. At the end of the day, honestly, man, I would say Taviar comes out as the quote unquote, starting is such an overblown word, right? The guy can be on the field for the first snap of the game.
Yeah, 98% of the snaps, but it wasn't on the first one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think Taviar will come out as the quote unquote starter, with Tyke mixing in certain packages, and then Izzy kind of doing his thing as well.
I think that's a fantastic point you just made about the cross training and maybe a little bit of the confusion, because it is true, year after year, there are just some plays, and it happens to every team, but it feels like with the Bucs, a couple of times, maybe not every game, but throughout the season, there are just complete blown coverages, wide open guys. I think the Texans game, ironically, with that on the screen, is like the perfect example of it. And you're just like, what was going on there? And then you try to ask Todd Bowles, and he just says miscommunication. But a lot of the times, sure, you may understand if it's someone like Izzy or Merriweather, but a lot of the times it's veteran guys that have been on this team and been in this defense for years and years and years. So on the one hand, I do look at it and say, okay, like maybe they should kind of rotate slot corners. So Tyke Smith gets an opportunity, and then Izzy in, and then Thomas, as you mentioned, kind of like what they may do at linebacker with, okay, well, KJ Britt's the guy, but if he can't cover, we'll then take him off the field on third down. But yeah, maybe that kind of leads into some of the issues that the Bucs have had with blown coverages. One guy I'm excited about that he's going to stay in one spot is Zion McCollum heading into this year. Because last season, I thought he played really well, but let's remember, 1 week he's subbing in for Jamal Dean. The next week he's coming in for Carlton Davis. Had to move all over the place this year. And who knows if he's going to be starting, because Kevin Ross had some great things to say about Bryce Hall. If Zion is the starter, I think he's got a great opportunity to really make a name for himself. Obviously, Bucs fans know him, but to stay in one spot, I think that comfortability will be super important. What's your excitement level for him going into this season?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited, and I'm right there with you. This is exactly what he needs. Year one, injured a lot, couldn't really get on the field. Year two, we saw, and we all knew he was an extremely high-end athlete coming in, right?
Yes.
But was really raw, needed that time to develop. And maybe the injuries in year one kept him from getting thrown into the fire too early or something. Like you just never know how that stuff plays out in the long run. But regardless, got got to see what he can do last year. I think they found out his strengths, and now they're putting him at his strength, which is on the outside. I'm glad they're giving him a defined role because even though, he's been in the league now for going on 3 years, he's still a very young player and somebody who needs stability to get to that, to get to his potential, to reach his ceiling. Absolutely love it and can't wait to see what he does.
What's your thoughts on the overall depth for the Bucs at corner? We mentioned Thomas before, but I think Bryce Hall is going to be a clutch signing. He does have starting experience, but then, he's on a Jets team that has Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I mean, those are two stud cornerbacks. So I don't even think it should be looked upon poorly that, he wasn't starting on that Jets defense. But, given the injury history of Jamal Dean, I think Bryce Hall could be way more important than I think a lot of people realize. And Kevin Ross even said today or yesterday that, he views him as a starter. We can play that video in a moment, but I really like the depth of the Bucs in their cornerback room. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, and actually, just real quick, before I came on, I actually reached out because I know who Bryce Hall is, and obviously have heard his name, watched him a little bit from here to here, but didn't really know him too much. Hadn't had time to really go too far into the background. And we have our Jets writer who has been following the team for 2 decades now. Said the exact same thing. He said, pretty good player, was pushed down the depth chart by DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. So right there tells you all you need to know in terms of how he got from New York to Tampa. I do like the depth. Obviously the Jamal Dean thing, he's got to be healthy. And when we say gets hurt, we're talking about missing 3 to 4 games, but that's a routine thing every year. And 3 to 4 games every single year adds up. It really does. And then plus the games where he's gotten nicked up early and has left, those games and stuff like that. So hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully he can catch the ball. Todd Bowles' quote, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, I think it was 2022, when he said, Jamal catches all the balls that he shouldn't, and he doesn't catch the one that he should. Hopefully he can get that going. But overall, I do like the depth. I do think they've got enough mixture of veterans and youth to where, and Jamal's obviously not too much, I think he's under 30. So I think it's a nice combo of veteran leadership and youth and athleticism at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well balanced. Let's get to this video of Kevin Ross talking about Zion McCollum, and then we'll get to him talking about Bryce Hall and funny thing he had to say about Jamal Dean as well.
Zion put his hands on some balls. He filled in nicely. He showed that he can play on this level. I expect him to take the next step. Consistency is the big thing, and not giving up any crazy plays.
What does it say about the staff's confidence in Zion, not only to trade Carlton away, but then to not put a high draft pick into a corner?
Says we believe in him. We believe in him. We believe in our backup as well. We haven't played with the same secondary in the last 5 years. And so I try to train all those guys, next player, next man up, things like that right there. So we understand that in that room. They understand what kind of pressure's on them and things like that right there, and they accept it, and they embrace the role.
To the point of consistency, how beneficial will it be for Zion to kind of stay in one spot at corner versus last year he was replacing Carlton, then replacing Jamal, and kind of moving all over the place?
Well, Zion can take a lot. He can do a lot. So we try to take advantage of his talent. This is true. This will be the first year he'll settle in that corner, and we'll see how well he plays there and go from there. In those three, Bryce Hall is a legit starter, I think, in this league.
Yeah.
Prepares well, very focused, and knows what he's doing, knows where his help is, and things like that. Yes.
Russell brought in Taulia Thomas. Mm-hmm. How does he factor in that mix? Obviously, he's
very physical player. Very physical player who will compete for the nickel job as well as the safety job. He should bring in some good intensity to that position as well.
What do you want to see out of Jamal Dean this season to get better as a player?
Catch the ball. If he catches the ball, he's all pro. He's a pro bowler. All he has to do is catch the ball. We've been emphasizing that in that room. And it really starts with me. I got to increase more ball drills with those guys. I've requested these guys catch 50 balls a day during this training camp right here. So we'll see. We got to catch the ball. We could have led the league in last year in takeaways had we caught the ball the way we needed to. And been competing for the ball is a little different.
Yeah.
But we're going to start with practice. It starts there. And I'm responsible for at least getting these drills together and getting their mindset right to catch the balls and do what they need to do.
Yeah, before we wrap up the show, the last person I want to talk about was Jamal Dean, because I do wonder if this could be Dean's last season with the Buccaneers, unless he steps it up, because he just hasn't taken the ball away over the past couple of seasons. It obviously reared its ugly head in the playoffs against the Lions when he dropped that interception in the end zone. Now, the Lions kicked a field goal, but again, you want no points, not some points. And, the combination of him getting injured plus him not taking the ball away, I mean, just based on the contracts alone, that's the reason why Carlton Davis got traded. There would have been the case if both contracts were the same value, same number of years and everything. It could have been Jamal Dean that got traded this offseason. But I do wonder if, time's ticking on Jamal Dean unless he really steps it up this year.
Yeah, I think it is. Unfortunately, too, because he's great, man. He's such a fun interview. He's such a cool person to talk to. Again, goes back to kind of the theme of what we've talked about throughout, player versus production, or production versus person, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he logs another goose egg this year and misses a few games, then, yeah, you've got to move on. I mean, Carlton is a good player. He's a solid player. But ultimately, he reached his ceiling here in Tampa Bay, and if Jamel goes through and does what he's done throughout his entire career, then we know that kind of player. Yes, it's a good player. Yes, it's a solid player. But hey, let's try to find that number one guy who is going to actually lock people down and take the ball away. Granted, if you're like a Sauce Gardner and you're just not getting targeted, completely different conversation. But Jamel Dean's getting targeted. He's got to catch these passes. And yeah, I mean, the Lions game, he gets that interception. Who knows what Baker Mayfield and company do on the next play, how it changes the game moving forward. Obviously, that one play didn't lose the game, but you just never know. It's a game of inches. Everything matters.
If you want the number one guy when it comes to buying or selling a home, it's best to go with Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group, the official realty group of PewterReport.com. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With their strong team of vendors and a network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website at housesinfla.com or give them a call at 513-907-4271. Once again, that website is housesinfla.com and their number is 513-907-4271. No matter where you are in your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor group of PewterReport.com. It's been a great episode today with Evan. Thank you so much again for joining me. We got a fun show tomorrow as well, as we will be grading the NFC South Giraffes, of course, the division rivals of the Bucs. We'll all have a good laugh at the Falcons drafting Michael Penix 8th overall and their quarterback situation, which should be a good time for tomorrow's show at 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel where we do the podcast, where we do live streams and put up tons of Bucs content. That's Pewter Report TV. So please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well. Evan, thank you so much for joining the show. Real quick, I put it up before, but let everyone know where they can follow you on social media and tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, man, no problem. Again, my pleasure to be on. Always happy to come on. And real quick, before I sign off, I wanted to drop this little quick nugget.
Yes, right. Undrafted free agents.
Yeah. So
apologies. Yes, please.
No, you're good, man. Rashad Wisdom, the kid out of UCLA, I believe that's right. Or no, UTSA. My bad.
Yeah, UTSA.
Yeah, so real quick, we looked up his RAS. I was doing some research for coming on. First off, 5'8", 203, has very similar combine numbers to that of Antoine Winfield Jr. Obviously, Antoine's about 5'9", 205, 210, whatever, same body type, compact, muscular. But when you look at his RAS comparables or comparables, listen to these three names. So number one, Mike Edwards, all familiar with him.
Yes.
But then number two, Bob Sanders. Number three, Troy Polamalu. So
wow.
Obviously, paper's paper. What matters is on the field, but keep an eye on this kid. I think he's got some potential to make some noise, especially I mean, Bucs had 2 UDFAs on the 53 starting last year,
did.
Merriweather and Izzy. So never know. But anyways, you can find me at A2ZSports.com. Again, all 32 teams. We've got a great staff of writers breaking into college football this year. And then you can find me on Twitter at Evan_ATOZ. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, you do a fantastic job over at A to Z. Really enjoy all of your work, and can't thank you enough again for joining today's show. So that's going to do it for us. For Evan Winter, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out. We always do the Antoine Winfield Jr. piece. Out.
Nice.